Hello and welcome back to my humble show. So I finally put the baby to bed. Now the cat is in my lap. Can't catch a break around here. But he will probably leave soon due to me talking loudly above him. I hope you stick around though. And let me know what you think and what you know down in the comments below. I'd be happy to hear from you even if you disagree with me. Just don't do so delusionally. I'm not a leftist. I'll explain that. I talked in one of my previous videos a bit about Pam Bondi, Attorney General Pam Bondi, and something she said about hate speech. I put that in scare quotes because it's not really proper legal terminology. But yeah, because I had the nerve, the audacity to criticize her for using the language of the left, some knucklehead, to put it kindly, jumped into the comments and started claiming that I was a leftist, which makes no sense at all. But I'm going to talk a bit more about it, just because there are a few more bits of information that came out after I talked about it, and I wanted to clarify things. No, wait, that was her. She needed to clarify things after she said that. So she did a bit of damage control, put out a post on her X account, which just goes to show how careless she was in the first place, if you ask me. But anyways, in case you missed it, here's the basic rundown of the timeline. Republicans, there's no such thing as hate speech. Pam Bondi, there's hate speech. We will absolutely target you. My question was then, and is now, I suppose, is Pam Bondi incompetent, or is it just me? It could be me, but no, it's not, just so you know. I'm no know-it-all, but I know enough to know I know at all. Put that in your pipe and smoke on it. Yeah, so interestingly enough, her posts, her quotes were getting community noted on X. Readers added context. I'll read that in a moment. Let me play this clip. Just 30 seconds long. Might have already heard it, but here it is.
There's free speech, and then there's hate speech. And there is no place, especially now, especially after what happened to Charlie, in our society.
Do you see more law enforcement going after these groups who are using hate speech and putting cuffs on people so we show them that some action is better than no action?
We will absolutely target you, go after you, if you are targeting anyone with hate speech, anything. And that's across the aisle. There's free speech, and then there's hate speech. And there is no place, especially now, especially after what happened to Charlie, in our society.
All right, so I played a little bit at the beginning of that. Second time, I was looking up Katie Miller. You see down there in the left-hand corner, Katie Miller podcast. Actually, the time bar is covering it up, sort of. But she is married to Stephen Miller, who obviously works within the Trump administration. I was just verifying that on my phone in front of me. But yeah, just so you know. Readers added context, saying hate speech is not a concept in the First Amendment jurisprudence. The First Amendment protects many things that could be described as hate speech. Government may not prohibit the expression of an idea simply because society finds the idea itself offensive or disagreeable. Now, like I said in my last video, though, certain knuckleheads may have completely ignored it. I didn't imagine that she would double down on this, at least not in the way that she initially said it. She would add context. That's what I assumed, and that's exactly what she did. She added context later, though readers added context more effectively than she did, if you ask me. She said that she was talking about violent speech. Okay. Well, speech in and of itself isn't necessarily violent, but you know what I mean. Calls to action, calls to violence, incitement of violence, things that are actually illegal and therefore having to do with legal terminology. But my contention was that she should not have been so careless as to use the language of the left in the first place, because she gave the liberal media some fuel for their fires. Their continuing claims, whether justified or not, that the Trump administration is cracking down on free speech. I will be talking about Jimmy Kimmel, the suspension of his show, in another video. So, like, subscribe, and enjoy the ride, I guess. But yes, Charlie Kirk believed that so-called hate speech was still free speech. Do better, AG Pam Bondi. Already talked about that. Listen to this and hear what Charlie Kirk's response to Pam Bondi would have been. I already played that in my previous video about this. I see Pam Bondi is attempting to both save face and semi-double down all at once. Yeah. So she said quite a bit, actually. I don't know if I'll read all of it, but starting out at the very beginning, I'll highlight the fact that she still started her statement with the term hate speech. She said, hate speech that crosses the line into threats of violence is not protected by the First Amendment. It's a crime. For far too long, we've watched the radical left normalize threats, call for assassinations, and cheer on political violence. That era is over. And then legal code, so on and so forth. And I don't take issue with her on any of this. I don't, even though I still would have started it off a little bit differently. Because she's trying to double down while at the same time doing damage control. That's what it seems like to me. I'm just saying, she should have been more careful in the first place. And then she wouldn't have had to clarify later. But still, readers added context to this. Which said, the U.S. Constitution protects most violent speech. The Supreme Court ruled it legal to justify or celebrate violence or advocate or teach the duty, necessity, or propriety of it, but not incitement to imminent violence, e.g. telling a mob with weapons to kill someone, which is what Democrats in large part claim Donald Trump did on January 6th. They said that he literally incited the, scare quotes, insurrection at the Capitol. No. He told them to be peaceful, if anything. Now, many of them may have very well been there because of him, but he did not incite them to commit such acts of violence in the legal sense. So, got to keep things nuanced and as neutral as possible here. There's a link to Supreme Court rulings and such. I'm not going to click on that because I'm trying to keep this show as short as possible since I've already beat the dead horse enough. But yeah, she continued at the end of her post here. We will never be silenced, not for our families, not for our freedoms, and never for Charlie. His legacy will not be erased by fear or intimidation. I'm just highlighting that because it's an interesting balance to strike when you're saying, we will never be silenced, while implying that you will go after individuals who speak too much, or at least too violently, which I'm glad she clarified that much. But still, I think she, as Donald Trump's Attorney General, should know better in the first place. Sometimes I have a hard time taking her seriously. But no, me not trusting her is not enough reason in and of itself to throw out the entirety of what I'm saying about her and about the situation. Like, no one is above criticism, including myself. Points worth taking into consideration now that Pam Bondi is doing damage control. Alex Griswold had posted this, and this is a couple of days ago now, so sorry if this is old news. It's just something worth talking about in my humble opinion. The Bondi hate speech clip wasn't even a live hit. It was a pre-recorded interview with Stephen Miller's wife. Think about how many White House staffers and close ideological allies were in the room or saw that clip during editing, and not one of them flagged it as problematic. Well, in all honesty, that's a bit of an assumption, because we don't know how many White House staffers were in the room. Even if we think about how many White House staffers were in the room, we don't know how many close ideological allies were in the room, even if we think about how many might have been in the room, or who might have seen that clip during editing. We just don't know. It could have been just a couple of people and they didn't think much about it. But Katie Miller did think about it enough to make it part of the intro for the interview. So as Adam Steinbaugh points out here, Katie Miller made Bondi's hate speech declaration the opening line. Yeah, you know how interviewees will often chop up parts of the interview that they find interesting or that they think the general public will find interesting, and they put it in a little intro at the beginning of the interview. That's what happened, and that's how it started, with Pam Bondi talking about hate speech. So, kind of a bad look if you ask me. Which is why conservatives like me were calling her out for it. And I don't understand people who find that unacceptable. Like, what? Is she your girlfriend or something? Just can't handle anyone coming after your girl. What's going on? Funny how Pam Bondi got community noted on this. As a side note, I criticized her in a YouTube show for using the language of the left, and some right-winger jumped into the comments to accuse me of being a leftist for having the audacity to criticize her. I'm clearly conservative, but can clearly see the idiots on both sides of the aisle, and I have no problem saying as much. So come at me, bro, I guess. But yeah, some violent language, if you want to call it that, is legally protected, which is why someone like Steven Crowder from Louder with Crowder can continue saying what he's saying currently about how he's encouraging violence, defensive violence. He's encouraging the right to be defensively violent against the attacks of the left. So it's not necessarily incitement to say it like that. Is it a little bit inflammatory, if you ask me? Yes, I don't say things like that. I don't say, you need to be more violent in defense. That's not how I roll. But I get it. And it is technically protected language. Now, if I was to say, hey, go to X, Y, or Z location and physically harm X, Y, or Z individual, that would be crossing a legal line into illegal territory. But what else do we have here? Some headlines from the day. I guess I can ignore this. The list of headlines may have changed since I actually pulled this up last. But earlier, I typed in Pam Bondi hate speech and clicked on the first 5 news articles that popped up. I might go through some of them just a little bit. I'm already nearly 14 minutes into this, so maybe I'll speed read through some of this. But Bondi clarifies, hate speech won't be prosecuted. Good to know. There she is. Attorney General Pam Bondi tells Axios her office is not prosecuting or investigating anyone for alleged hate speech, only for speech that she sees or says unlawfully incites violence. But even that can be tough to determine and somewhat subjective sometimes, as we saw with everyone's perspective in regards to Donald Trump and the quote-unquote January 6th insurrection. Democrats said incitement of violence. Republicans said not so much. I agree with the Republicans on that, but I'm just saying. I'm just one person with one opinion here, and someone else from a different political affiliation is more than likely going to have a different opinion. But I don't mean to suggest that there's just a giant gray area when it comes to this sort of thing. It's usually pretty simple. At the end of the day, if you look up the various codes and statutes and whatnot, but still worth having a conversation about, since there is such a lack of clarity and apparent confusion even within the Republican Party over whether or not hate speech is legal terminology. So yeah, why it matters. Bondi sought to clarify her comments during a Monday podcast in which she said the Justice Department would absolutely target you, go after you, if you are targeting anyone with hate speech. Now, some might say that her using the word targeting was an action verb to the point where she was referring to like literal physical targeting. But that's not always how people use the word targeting these days now, is it? They don't always mean that you're like picking up a weapon and aiming it at a target or anything like that. It could just mean that I'm talking to you hatefully and therefore I'm targeting you with my hateful words. So, back to subjectivity of it all again. Her remarks drew criticism from across the political spectrum, including from some fellow MAGA Republicans who, as a group, have historically been sensitive to curbs on free speech. But Bondi told Axios in a written statement that she was talking about criminal groups or people that incite violence, not those who said hateful things about the slaying last week of conservative activist Charlie Kirk, a friend of Bondi's. So yeah, some of the celebrations following Charlie Kirk's assassination are still technically not criminal. They might be civil at most, civil infringements at most, like slander, legally liable, whatnot. You might be legally liable for slander if you say something on a news broadcast, for example, which is factually false. But just generally speaking, though I'm all for people being fired for celebrating the assassination of a political figure, they're not exactly going to get thrown in jail. And if they were to get thrown in jail simply for celebrating, then yeah, that would be an infringement upon freedom of speech. And I understand that Charlie Kirk was exercising his freedom of speech when he was gunned down, but that does not justify switching the shoe of radicalism onto the other foot and then becoming the fascist regime that the left already delusionally believes is oppressing them. I don't think that's what's happening here. A lot of people are saying a lot of things, and I'm just saying what I have to say. So, just so you know. A lot of writing here. I'm not going to read it all. I'm going to move on to the next headline from CNN. And the essence of time here. Pam Bondi's hate speech comments lead even some conservatives to cry foul. So, I'm not just imagining the controversy. It was a controversy. Hopefully, it is cleared up and won't happen again, but there's always going to be something. Within hours of Charlie Kirk's assassination last week, President Donald Trump signaled a rather curious crackdown. My administration will find each and every one of those who contributed to this atrocity and to other political violence, including the organizations that fund it and support it, he said. There was no evidence last week that the shooter was anything other than a lone wolf actor, and there still isn't. But Trump said his response would broadly target lots of supposed culprits of political violence. Well, that could just be political violence, generally speaking. I'm all for weeding that out. These groups, online groups, offline groups, that congregate together and encourage each other to commit acts of violence. That's radicalism in its true domestic terrorism form, I suppose. And I'm opposed to all of that. So, I mean, the government is supposed to be going after that sort of thing. Now, when Donald Trump starts talking about how media figures, talking heads on television need to be fired en masse because they criticize him too much, that's a little bit beyond me. I mean, I'm not on board with that notion. Now, I don't always know exactly what Trump means because he kind of throws stuff out there. He's kind of freeballing sometimes, and then it comes back to bite him. He's not exactly a lawyer himself. So, another long, lengthy article here. I'm not going to read all of it either. Treating the president unfairly is also not a crime or the purview of law enforcement. And the fact that Trump floated it could throw fuel on the fire. Everything he says throws fuel on the fire, fairly or not. But yeah, he does have a tendency to step on rakes. And as someone who voted for him, I have no problem admitting that. An article from Newsweek, list of Supreme Court hate speech precedents as Pam Bondi wants crackdown. You know what? Here's a statement from Mike Johnson. Might as well play it.
Very important part of our tradition that we do not, this is a conservative principle, and certainly an American principle, we do not censor and silence disfavored viewpoints.
Agreed.
People in America are allowed to say crazy things.
Agreed.
Now that said, if I'm an employer or I'm a government agency and I have someone in my employ who is online celebrating the heinous murder of an innocent person, a young husband and father, I can make the decision that they don't deserve to work for me. They should.
Agreed. So, good riddance, Jimmy Kimmel. Though his show has technically just been suspended, I believe, unless there is a new update on that.
Shouldn't represent my company or my agency, and I have every right to do that, and I think that's appropriate.
Agreed.
It's not the government censoring speech. That's personal behavior and decorum, and you have a right to enforce that. So I don't think it's a violation of core principles for people to have appropriate measures taken when they act like crazy people online.
Agreed.
And that's up to the employers and these private businesses and these the people who make those decisions. That's not something that Congress is involved in. But I mean, I think all of that is intellectually consistent, and we'll continue to defend it.
So see, if you could stomach me criticizing Pam Bondi, then you must have stuck around long enough to hear some things you agree with, right? Agreeing with everything Mike Johnson said there. I have no issues with that. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi has said she will crack down on hate speech and target people who engage in it following the assassination of Charlie Kirk, despite U.S. Supreme Court ruling that broadly as protected speech. And yeah, we've already covered all of that. First Amendment's free speech protections have faced scrutiny in the United States, including on college campuses and reviews of social media accounts for green card applicants, and now in connection to Kirk's death. The Supreme Court, however, has repeatedly ruled that the government can't punish hate speech under the First Amendment, noting that there is no general hate speech exception. Below are just a few examples of such instances. Statements from Samuel Alito, John Roberts, all that in a bag of chips. But you get it. Government overreach is a no-no. I'm not on board with that. Jobs, businesses firing their employees because of poor representation of their company, that's a you problem, whoever you are. Now, I don't exactly wish for America in which case companies are obeying the commands of the government or anything like that to an extent where freedom of speech is indirectly harnessed or hampered. But I don't think I'm saying anything outlandish here. Bondi in hot water over hate speech comments. This is from The Hill. And here's a clip of her speaking for herself.
We're going to talk about who's under investigation, especially organized groups who are jeopardizing the lives of our men and women in law enforcement. Earlier today, you heard Stephen Miller talking, and you heard the president talking about these organized groups who are out there doxing law enforcement, having people swatted at their homes. That jeopardizes lives, and that's why it's so serious. None of these are pranks. This is an organized effort, paying people to come in and commit acts of violence. So yes, we're looking at a lot of people. Never going to mention what groups we're investigating. Sure. First Amendment is one of our most important amendments, of course, in our Constitution. We will always protect the First Amendment. But you cannot create violence, and that's what's happening. When people are working together, you talked about RICO, it's RICO. When people are working in concert to commit crimes, the president was talking about people who are breaking up bricks, throwing it at police cars, people who are being paid to dox police officers, to dox victims of crimes, that can jeopardize lives, and that's when you cross the line from First Amendment to a crime, and we will prosecute them. I really do have to.
All right, so I don't have any issue with that. Crossing the line, crossing that legal line into illegal territory. Yep, sounds good to me. I mean, sounds bad to me if anyone does that, and it's definitely prosecutable, so therefore worth investigating. This does remind me of something Donald Trump said, I believe, during his first administration with Pam Bondi in the room when she was not his attorney general at that time. Of course, he said something about taking guns away from people and then figuring out the crime, essentially, is what he suggested at that time. And it was a very careless remark. He took some criticism from certain conservatives. It didn't exactly come into fruition in the way that he said it. But things like that get said on the right, and they're worth calling out. Attorney General Pam Bondi under scrutiny over her comments about blah 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 blah. This is all just afterthought. It's getting repetitious, I know, so I'll wrap this up momentarily. But Bondi's comments about hate speech drew pushback from prominent conservatives, including Megyn Kelly, Eric Erickson, Matt Walsh, and Representative Thomas Massie. No surprise on that last one, right? Who noted hate speech is generally protected under the First Amendment. Yeah. So she since clarified her comments, but many of these articles were written with the initial statements in mind. That's what happens. If you're careless in the first place, that's what's going to get the coverage. That clarifying post doesn't always make the news cycle. One last article here on this. Donald Trump being asked about it. I believe, yeah. Trump rips into ABC reporter after being asked about Pam Bondi's hate speech remarks. That's what's written under the video, if it'll pop up here. As for the headline of the Fox News article, Trump rips into ABC reporter after being asked about Pam Bondi's hate speech remarks.
Pam Bondi saying she's going to go after.
Okay, so the heading down here is the same as the heading up here. Here's the clip.
And what do you make Pam Bondi saying she's going to go after hate speech? Is that, I mean, a lot of your allies say hate speech is free speech.
She'll probably go after people like you because you treat me so unfairly.
Probably go after people like you. there he is stepping on the rake. Of course, half the people on the right will say, "Slay King, slay." You know, it's his Hillary Clinton debate moment where he suggests that if he were in charge of the law in the country, she'd be in jail, which never happened. But yeah, I'm not a fan of him responding in that way, suggesting that Pam Bondi either would or should or could go after an ABC News reporter for asking too many critical questions.
Hey, you have a lot of hate in your heart. Maybe they'll come after ABC. Well,
now he would just say, if he got into too much hot water, he would just say that he was joking. That's the thing with him. He walks that not so fine line where he says things that are hyperbolic, flamboyant, and depending on the response to it, he can say that he was being serious, or he can say that he was joking. Like when he said he was going to end the war in Ukraine within 24 hours of becoming president. Then later he was like, "Oh, I was just joking. I was being sarcastic." Well, if it would have happened, he would have said that he was serious and that he kept his promise. Come on, you know I'm right. Maybe it's smart on his part, maybe it's strategic, but I wish that both he and Pam Bondi would be more careful in the first place. President Donald Trump lashed out at ABC News reporter, or correspondent, I should say, Jonathan Karl, that's that guy's name, on Tuesday after he was questioned about Attorney General Pam Bondi's recent comments on cracking down on hate speech following the assassination of Turning Point USA founder Charlie Kirk. Kicking the can down the road at this point.
ABC paid me $16 million recently for a form of hate speech, right? Your company paid me $16 million for a form of hate speech.
So yeah, a form of hate speech, I suppose you could call it that. But then why not just call it what it is in the legal sense? Slander or defamation or something of that nature. Instead of just saying, "Oh, they were hateful to me, and so I sued them." That's what you make it sound like. He's saying a form of hate speech. Okay, if it's just a form, then call it the actual form.
Maybe they'll have to go after you. Look, we want everything to be fair. It hasn't been fair. And the radical left has done tremendous damage to the country. But we're fixing it. We have right now the hottest country anywhere in the world. And remember, 1 year ago, our country was dead. And now Washington, D.C. is fixed, and I fixed it. The mayor was fine.
Okay. Improvements have been made, including in statistics on crime in D.C. So, some positive developments. Yes. Has everything been fixed? No, absolutely not. That's what I've got, though, for now. Spent a lot more time on that than I would have liked to. But thank you for watching, for listening. Keep in touch, keep in tune. New content is coming soon. I feel like I need to adjust my webcam a little bit. It is kind of broken, so it keeps slipping down and cutting off the top of my head whenever I lean forward. That's better. Yeah, that'll do. Peace.